get it right. It is a very tough decision, and it requires a level of focus and the ability to not be distracted by the existing environment or things that have come in the wake of it. What I will say is that I've had the opportunity to host my own interviews with candidates, which also includes Mr. Franklin. I think I talked about that stepped outside of the IACP process to one that I did want to sit down with. So I've done that. Now I am in the process of, again, making my decision. And as I mentioned, it is a very important one. And I'm going to give it all the attention that it deserves. You'll be hearing more from me on that. And that's what I have to give you right now. And we have some very impressive candidates, those that I was able to meet with. And that, I believe, was the intent. The intent of the New Orleans City Council that called for a national search, and something that I embraced fully. Also making sure that we had of course, robust community engagement through the process that culminated in a external panel as well as an internal panel. So I am weighing on all of those factors that have been embedded in my process and will render a decision shortly.
Leah with WWL, if you have a question.
Yes, staying on the front of the search for the police chief, saying that you were embracing the national search and the support from the city council to do just that. There were some concerns from city councilors asking for more information when it comes to how those candidates were narrowed down. Has any of that information, or will any of that information be turned over to the council so they can see how those candidates were narrowed down?
Sure, that was weeks ago, and that was by the consultant that was hired to manage the search. So IACP immediately turned over, of course, information, always being transparent and engaging the New Orleans City Council in the process from start and even to finish, which culminates, as you know, as a confirmation hearing. And so the City Council is still embedded in the next step, or the next phase, I would say, of the process. And so, yes, information was shared.
And as a follow-up question, Interim Superintendent Michelle Booker says she's eschewing for the job, feeling very confident about it. Any comments or any thoughts on that?
What I will say is that there's no shoe-in for anyone, and that I have made sure that I'm conducting a very fair process and giving candidates who want to lead the New Orleans Police Department a fair opportunity and a fair shake, and that includes our interim chief, Woodford.
Thank you.
Cassie with WDSU, and then Alyssa.
Good morning, Mayor. So tomorrow there's a consent decree hearing to discuss the handling of Officer Jeffrey Baptie's investigation. Are you going to be going to that hearing, and what are your thoughts of moving forward? I know the city was trying to stop it previously.
Sure. So as it relates to the consent decree, because this is a consent decree issue, I am where I've always been. In terms of staying in lanes and sticking with the scope of authority. One of my issues with the handling of the consent decree, based on the judge as well as the monitor, again, stepping outside of their lane, which they continue to demonstrate that they focus on things that are not aligned with the consent decree, picking and choosing a particular investigation, again, outside of the scope. So what I will say is that I'm looking for bias-free monitoring and just bias-free relative to the handling of the consent decree.
Do you think there was any special treatment involved in this investigation?
Special treatment, what do you mean?
Special treatment. So one of the things that they're looking at is how it was handled, of whether, because of who the person was being looked at, was this case the same handled as other cases in the past when it comes to payroll irregularities?
So what I will say is that from the PIB side of it, absolutely handled effectively. It went even further, I would say, than most investigations have been. And when you talk about the handling, I would say more so on the outside, meaning those agencies that have no authority relative to the investigation. That is where I have a problem. That is unprecedented. That is bias. And
you mentioned, were you gonna be there tomorrow or not? I had meant to ask that question.
I do not participate in hearings relative to the consent decree. I have the leadership of the New Orleans Police Department, the city attorney's office, and attorneys that are assigned to manage the consent decree on behalf of the New Orleans Police Department, but more importantly, on behalf of the city of New Orleans.
Thank you.
Melissa with WWL.
Good morning, Mayor. Mark Nobles is here, you and your family. Yesterday we learned there's many vendors for this city, as well as the teams that have not been paid by the city, some dating back to years. Why is that, and does the city take responsibility for those invoices not being paid?
So not speaking specifically to what you're saying, so I don't agree with you at all. Like, I don't know, you're not being specific, but what I will say, you're talking about years. I'm just hearing of that, but what I will say relative to our young people, and this unfortunate, very unfortunate incident relative to their pay and being paid timely, which has a lot to do not only with data collection methods, as well as organizations or agencies that are not necessarily under the city of New Orleans. They're ancillary agencies. And so we are going to, and we are doing everything possible to not only address the data collection, making sure that we have accuracy there, but getting checks cut to our young people. That is the priority. But also, the priority is on ensuring that we have systems in place moving forward, and particularly data systems that can manage the various agencies that we want to allow for them to hire young people for summer employment in the future. So we went very deep on this, and we went deep intentionally, meaning deep expanding the scope of inclusion, and that's why we were able to employ more young people than ever before. And sometimes with that, you're just wanting to get them signed up and give me that paperwork, later, get it later. We just need to get them in the queue. But what we're going to do is build out a robust system, data collection system, so that we can manage more effectively, and at the end of the day, get people paid on time.
What is your response to Councilmember Moreno asking for the legislative auditor to come in and take a look at the city's bookings and all of that?
Well, anytime offering or engaging the legislative auditor, I'm not against any investigations. I think that this particular city council, that's all they've been about, quite frankly. And it's been a waste of time, it's been a waste of money. But at the end of the day, if it proves that practices are effective or even practices can be improved upon, then I'm all for it. So we're always looking for, my team, my administration, always looking for solutions. And we will continue to be solution focused as well as solution driven, period.
Do you think it's a waste of time to bring in the legislative auditor when there's a vendor who did work back in 2022 who still owed $7 million?
I don't know specifically what you're talking about, so I'm not going to respond specifically to what you're bringing up to me. So what I believe is that if there's any issues that we need to comb through, we're committed to doing that. So no one's hiding the ball. No one's not wanting to right or wrong. No one's not willing to go as deep as necessary to ensure that everyone is paid accurately and timely. I believe that my administration, based on things that we have put in place, speak to that, and we'll continue to improve every step of the way, as we've demonstrated.
Again, one question and one follow-up. Natasha, if I could say.
You talked about fewer vehicle burglaries and auto thefts in August this year compared to last. I know that's something that a lot of people in the city are worried about and have become victims of. What specifically is the NOPD doing to target that? And also bait cars, which we've talked about before. Where are we on that?
Sure. So the bait car, we are wanting to embrace that innovative approach and what we have seen in other municipalities. That is still a work in progress. And it's one, again, ongoing. So I am confident that we're going to get there because the focus just remains on that as a potential solution. While we wait on that, because there are multiple tools, right, that we can use and we are deploying. that have proven to be effective just based on the stats that we're talking about, progress being made. And it is simply utilizing the data in real time, and our police department, our officers making adjustments in real time, and we've just seen how that has resulted in fewer burglaries, fewer thefts.
Mayor Myers with the application.
Mr. Franklin confirmed he would take the job if offered to him.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, David Franklin, who you interviewed for the NOPD job, did he confirm that he would take the job if it offered to him?
No.
Okay. Did he indicate as to why he had dropped out to begin with?
No.
Carly with Axios.
Good morning, Mayor. So with the graffiti initiative that you're announcing later today, you mentioned it's going to be targeting some of the most egregious instances in the city. What do you consider the most egregious?
Oh, I mean, you can ride around the city and you can see graffiti on private buildings as well, public property, you see them on walls throughout the city. I would say this program is to tackle graffiti throughout the city. So it's not just in a specific area of the city, but of course, the contractors that have been hired will do their assessments and will come up with the areas of focus on the front end. But also with that, develop a strategy that is aligned with what I know best practices say. And that is, when you're talking about removing graffiti, you have to do it swiftly and you have to be consistent. Once you remove it, chances are, if it comes back, you have to immediately remove it. So we're going to be deploying these strategies in hope that we will see progress, from month to month. We know that it will not happen overnight, but again, this is something that we're aligning with best practices, much like, New York, I would say, when they tackled graffiti on the subway. Every time a car went into the station, if it was graffitied, it was painted before going back out. It's kind of like that same concept, but it's not something that it's going into a little storage area to paint. It's all open to the public.
And so with the graffiti on private buildings, is there going to be a delineation between like street art, like if people got a mural painted on the side, hired a street artist to do that, are they going to be able to ask not to be painted over?
Well, first of all, culture is a part of our economy. It's who we are as people. And it's something that we are investing in as a city. And so clearly, we're not wanting to destroy public art. But definitely, as it relates to graffiti that we know that doesn't speak to the charm nor character of the city of New Orleans.
Last question, Jordan with WGNO.
I wanted to commend your strength for returning to work because grief can be paralyzing, so I wanted to note that. The 2% of kids you said that have not received payments, I'm sure even some of those kids in the 2% are receiving those payments. But do you all know when all of those teens who worked over the summer will have received paychecks? Is there like a deadline in mind?
So every day is a deadline we shoot for. And that is to make sure that we have not only accuracy in regards to data, that also is aligned with the funding sources that we use that can then trigger payment. So we will continue to work directly with all parties to ensure that our young people are paid. Again, the good news is that the opportunity is something that we were allowed to provide. And although the payment is slow, it will be 100%. And it does speak to not only the character of our young people, but just being, I would say, developed, in terms of living, just living. Things happen. And when they do, you just stay the course. And I just commend my young people for that. I really do. Being someone who started working at the age of 14, I know that the experience, that hand-on experience, will be more beneficial to them more than ever. I do appreciate you putting a focus even on grief. I'm working through it. And every day is a different one. And I'm working through it, of course, personally, but as a mom. you know, and this is my first experience with that. I did lose my father. My dad died at 47, but I was 25, but the impact's still there. It's still different. And then when I received a public records request on yesterday asking for, how many days did the mayor take off, because of the loss of her husband? I'm like, wow, no problem. But as mayor, I don't have any days accrued in terms of vacation or bereavement, or I don't stack up time like that because I'm not, although you say I'm an employee, I'm really not as it relates to those types of things. I got into other things that you didn't ask me.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.